Hey everybody, so I will be working on Simplicity's 9261 and I'm going to be doing view B. It's made for knit only, knit fabric only, so it's for stretch knits like a cotton interlock, ITY knits, jerseys. I will be using a scuba, which is more of a stable knit, but let's see if it stretches. Hopefully if it stretches, I'll use it. So I will be cutting out a size 24 because my bust is around 45, so it's in between 22 and 24. So to have a little extra room, I will be doing a 24. So the body measurement is 46, finished measurement is 46 as well, so no ease there. For the hips is 48 for the body measurements. Mine is straight hips is a 48, but added in my little pooch that I have is a 50, so I'm going to use a 50. The intended ease for this is finished measurement is 51, body measurement 48, so the intended ease is 3 inches, right? So if my body measurement is 50, because I'm adding in the pooch, and they wanted 3 inches of ease, that's 53, and I'll minus out the ease that's already there is 51, so I'll just need to add 2 inches to the side seams to still be in line with the pattern makers intended the ease to be. So if it's 2 inches, you divide that by 4 because you have 4 side seams. So I'll be adding a ½ inch to the side seams along the hip area. So hopefully that makes sense. If you need me to do that a little bit more in depth, just let me know and I will. This is the fabric I will be using. Like I said, it's a variation of a scuba. It is a, God, I forgot the name, crepe to something. I'm gonna put it up here somewhere to let you know what it is. But it's all it is a lightweight scuba. Okay. So, just so we can see, this is the salvage, right? Yep, that is the salvage. So along the salvage, which is the lengthwise grain, I'm going to count 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So see how far I go. About 1 inch. Okay. So perpendicular to the salvage is the crosswise grain. So let's see how far that one goes. Count again to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that one goes about 2 inches. Okay. So here's the guide. And it's saying, I don't have my glasses on. Oh, yeah. It says 4 inches, so we just did that. And it's saying that it should stretch 2 inches. So basically, it's saying to put 4 inches here. Like, remember, I just counted 4, right? And then it should stretch from there to there. So here to here is 2 inches. And remember, we just did it and that was 2 inches, but just so you can see, putting it here. Okay, so here, see if I go below it so you can kind of see it. So from here to here, that's basically 4 inches, and they want you to hold it and stretch it to this part, and it should stretch with ease. And as you see, mine does. So that's that 2 inches. All right, so this fabric would definitely work. Even though it is a stable knit, it will still work. And just to give you a little bit more on this fabric, if you look at it, if you hold, like I like to hold knuckles up to it, you can really kind of see that you'll be able to see, it'll show lumps and bumps and, you know, things of that nature. So since this is a bodycon, I will probably be using shapewear, you know, to help, you know, so it won't show, you know, as much. So that's the other thing. Since it's a lightweight scuba, you know, it doesn't have that texture to it. So or the thickness, I should say, not the texture, but the thickness to it. So, you know, it does show a little bit more lumps and bumps. So just FYI, if you have some of those. But it is translucent, so you can see light through it, but it is opaque. So you cannot see, so if I put it down like this, you cannot see my grid through it, okay? It is opaque, but it is translucent, meaning you can see light through it. If you hold it up to the light, you can, light does shine through it, is what that means. It does have nice drape. If I hold it, where we at here, hold it, it'll fall basically onto itself. And so I already washed my fabric and dried it. I washed it hot water, dried it on hot, to try to get all the shrinkage out of it that I could. Now going forward, I always wash my handmade garments in delicate cycle and low temperature in the dryer, and don't let it dry all the way in the dryer, just to take most of the dampness out. But when I first wash it to get all the shrinkage out, I do everything on hot. Oh, and it does say, let's see what notions, it does say that you will need, of course, thread, and you're going to need some lining, tree coat, which is a knit lining, because this is for knit. You want it to be able to stretch with your garment as well. So you'll need some tree coat. This is tree coat or it's either power mesh. Can't really remember, and I don't think I have. No, I don't. So either one will work, power mesh or tricot. As you can see, it's kind of, it is sheer, but it does have the stretch that you need that way and this way. All right, so instead of it just being for the bodice piece, I may extend it to go further down, so I don't have to worry about shapewear. But anyway, so that's your tricot or power mesh that you want to use along with your bodycon. And you know, with this, you can also use this, you know, off subject, anything that you want to have like shapewear with. So pants that's kind of form-fitting, dresses, so you don't have to have shapewear. And there's different weights to this as well, to both tricot and power mesh. There's different weights. I want to say this is the lighter weight. You can use, you know, the heavier weight that gives more support and more coverage, foundation coverage, I should say. Yeah, all right, so I will be cutting out my pattern pieces. Don't need to go through that. You don't need to see that. Everyone should know how to do that. If you don't worry. There is a free video that I have online that shows you how to do that. So when I come back, we will just get to sewing. So what do you need in order to sew this? So first thing first is your needle. Preferably you're going to need a stretched needle because it is a knit, but because it's a stable knit, you can get away with a jersey as well. And you see the size there that I'm using, an 80-12. And that just depends on your fabric, but that is, you know, kind of the common size. I will be using a walking foot. There you go. I will be using a walking foot, and that's basically dog feet on the top of the fabric, in addition to the dog feet on the bottom. All right, so that's what a walking foot does. It just helps the fabric feed through the machine much easier. I will be using all-purpose polyester thread. And you just use that in the color of your choices. Now with stitch, this is right here, looks like a lightning bolt, but that is the stretch stitch. because it's a knit, I will be using that most definitely on all horizontal seams. If you don't have this, you can use a zigzag and just make it a narrow zigzag. And a narrow zigzag is the stitch length is a 2.5 and the width is a 0.5 or 1.0. Take your preference, but I'll be using this one. You should use your stretch or the zigzag on all horizontal seams. And you can also use it on your vertical seams, but you don't have to. You can use a straight stitch. Just whenever it stretches outward, you know, you may want to most definitely want to use your stretch stitch there. All right, so grab pattern piece number 1, which is the bodice front. You should have cut 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. So when we go to the sewing machine, you're going to do the same steps that I'm going to show you on both the fabric and the lining. Okay, so you should have made your marks for your dart. Make sure to pin those together. All right, as so, and basically what you want to do is I make little clips here, which kind of helps me. All right, and so I start there, pin on one side, bring it out, make sure that it's on the other dart leg there, the line. If it's not, I bring my finger here to support it, to bring it on that line. So that's how I know that those 2 are together. So I do that one, and then at the top I'll place a pin, and you're also going to place a couple more pins there. And you're going to sew from the widest point, back stitch all the way off, and you're going to sew and sew off. You're going to leave a long tail, cut it, and then you're going to tie the end at the dart point here. They want you to, after you sew it, they want you to press it flat along the stitches to melt the stitches into the fabric. And then what they want you to do is fold the dart toward the center front, and they want you to base along the edge there. Okay, and then after you do that, you're going to have right sides together. All right, right sides together, and you should have made 2 marks along this the front here, the center front, you want to say. Should have had 2 marks. And all you want to do is stitch between these 2 marks, back stitching at both ends there. Do all that to pattern piece number 1 and come back. Now you're going to take pattern piece number 2, which is the bodice back. You should have cut 1 on the fold of fabric and cut 1 on the fold of lining. So these are your back pieces, and you're just going to put right sides together of both your fabric and your lining pieces. So here is the fabric, and you're going to do the exact same thing with the lining pieces, and you're just going to join them at the shoulders. Okay, you're just going to pin at the shoulders. First, pin at any notches that you may have. So find the notch. You have a notch there. You can see correspond here. So you want to pin that notch first. Okay. And then you want to pin at the neckline. Even out the neck. Okay, because you want that to match up. And then pin at the armhole. And then you're going to pin in between, okay? And you're going to repeat that for the other shoulder, and then you want to sew from the neckline out to the armhole at 5/8 of an inch, and press out. Now, I don't say all the way throughout, but whenever you sew a seam, make sure to press that seam. I'm not going to always say that, but that is the rule. Whenever you sew a seam, press it, okay? But for this, sew it at 5/8, starting at the neck down to the armhole, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, pressure seam. You can trim it if you like, but you don't have to finish it because you have to remember your bodice piece will be lined, okay? You can finish it if your fabric frays or if you just want to. But so go ahead and do that for both your fabric piece and your lining piece and come back. All right, so moving on to pattern piece number 5. All right, so grab that. This is the flange, which goes along the armhole, okay? And so you should have used some interfacing to it. As you can see, I don't do my whole thing, my whole piece, because you actually sew in the seam allowance. So I don't like to have that extra bulk. So this is like a 2-inch strip. But so what you want to do is fold it so that it is right side out. So you're folding wrong side to wrong side. So you should be looking at your correct side out, okay? So you want to pin along any notches that you have, for example here. All right, pin along any notches that you have, and then pin at the ends, and then pin in the middle. All right, and then you want to baste these close, so just a basting stitch. All right, and then starting at, I want to say at the fold. Yeah, starting at the fold, you're going to come down a 1/2 inch, and you're going to top stitch. We're going to hang now. Top stitch. So my top stitching I do at 3.0 stitch length, okay? So you can do top stitches like 3 to 3.5. So you can play around with it. So again, from the folded edge, come down a 1/2 inch and top stitch a row all the way down. From that first top stitch line, come down another 1/2 inch, stitch another row of top stitching. From that second top stitch, come down a last time a 1/2 inch, and sew top stitch there. So you should have 3 rows. Skittles, really? Sorry. You should have 3 rows of top stitching, all a 1/2 inch apart. All right, so when you finish sewing the 3 rows of top stitches on your flange, that's what it should look like. So now you need your completed bodice piece. You want to turn it so that it's right side facing out. All right, and we're going to work on putting the flanges along the armhole, okay? And I think, yeah, so what you want to do is match up your notches that you have here, and you have some dots. So you want to match up those, okay? You can do one armhole at a time. I'm going to match up these. I'm going to match up these notches here first and foremost, because it's just easier. And this middle notch corresponds to the shoulder. I'm going to open up my seam allowance here. And I'm going to go on to the other notch. And you want raw edges together, okay? And then you just pin so it doesn't seem like the flange go all the way down. At least mine don't. So pin in the middle. Now, after you done did your notches. All right, and when you finish your pinning, you want to baste this in place. And so when I'm basting, I usually just do at a 1/4 inch seam allowance to make it easier on myself. And basting, of course, is at the highest stitch length that your machine can handle. Mine goes up to a 5. So you want to repeat the process of pinning and basting the other armhole with the other flange, and when you finish doing that, come back and we'll move on to the next step. And we're on step number 7. I want to say 7 and 8 it will be. So you need pattern pieces number 3, which is the bodice side front, and number 4, which is the bodice side back. Okay, you should have fabric pieces, and you should have lining. All right, so what we're going to do is, these are the side seams. You're going to attach them at the side seams. Okay. So you're going to put right sides together. So right sides together, we're going to take one piece, and it should be 1 on 1, meaning one of these dots. I mean, one of the dots, one of the notches. All right, and then when you open it, let's pretend like we're opening it. It should have this. Put this up so you kind of see it. It should have this U type of shape. And on one side, it should have double notches, as you can see there. And on the other side at the top, or kind of like the side right there, should have 1 notch. All right, and you should have a marking at the top of both each. So that's how you know you're doing it right. But just attach them at the side seam. Okay, and so you want to pin. And so you're going to do your lining the exact same. Oops, I pinned wrong, right? Did y'all catch me? I didn't do the notch first. Anywho, all right. And you're going to sew at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And again, you do not have to finish it because you have lining pieces, unless you want to. All right, so go ahead and do all your pieces and come back. All right, so grab the matching pieces of the side, back, and front fabric to the lining, and you're going with right sides together. Okay, right sides together. You're gonna pin. You're gonna pin along the upper edge here, and remember at your seam allowance to flatten out your seam allowances. Okay, and what you're gonna do is stitch 5/8 of an inch along the top edge, and then once you do that, you are going to understitch it. Okay, all right, back from the sewing machine. So this is kind of what you should have now. You attach the lining to the fabric. All right, so understitching is you're going to pull the lining away from the fabric, and the seam allowance should also be away from the fabric. Okay, so what you're going to do is on the lining side, making sure to catch the seam allowance that should be away from the fabric. All right, you're going to sew on the lining side about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam line that we created when we attached it. So you should have a seam line there. So this is your seam line. Okay, and you are going to sew about here, about right here. Okay, on the lining, ensuring to catch the seam allowance on the underside. Okay, once you do that, because this is a curve, you want to make sure to clip in, create snips. Okay, into your curves, and that just allows it, when you turn this to the inside, it just allows it to lay nice and flat. Okay, all right, so back from the sewing machine, and just to give you a close-up of the understitching, see, catching the seam allowance, stitching on the lining about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam. All right, and I don't think I told you to trim the seam allowance. I think I just told you to clip it, but we trim it first. We like it to be, or I like it to be about 1/4 inch. So here I'll probably trim about half. And then you're going to basically clip into those curves. You don't want to clip your stitches, obviously, but you want to clip into the curves. And then once you do that, it should be a lot easier to turn and get a nice edge, especially once you press it. So go ahead and do that. Anyway, go ahead and press it and come back.